So depending on your setup, sometimes you'll have, I usually work with two screens. Right now I'm just working with the one screen. So I have all of my bins and everything in this one, or this, all my windows right here in this one panel on the monitor. So what I was going to do today is, I think, the basic editing of getting stuff, on the timeline. I feels like everyone understands that. So what I wanted to do is go through some of the menus and then we'll move on to talking about some of the visual effects and keyframing, and things like that. So the thing about Premiere is there are a lot of different ways to do the same thing. So if you can think of something you want to do, you can probably do it. You just need to figure out how to do it. So it's good to just spend some time kind of exploring your option, just exploring the software and seeing what all these different menus do. So things that are handy to know about is if you come up to Premiere here and you go to Preferences, there's a whole list of different preferences, and you can go to General. Most of these default preferences are just fine. One thing that I think is important to look at is your autosave. And the autosave, Premiere will automatically save your program, and sometimes Premiere crashes, and so you want to be saving your project. I have mine set to every 5 minutes. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's too much, but if I have it set to 10 or 15 minutes, possible that I've done a lot of work in 15 minutes, and if it crashes, you've lost all that. So it's important to come in here, and I like say 5 or 10 minutes, set your minutes to that. And then the maximum project versions, I have it set to 99, so I can go way back. Like if I say, oh, yesterday I did something really cool and I accidentally deleted it, I can go back and find what I had done. And these, the autosave is saved right next to your, wherever you've saved your project. When you go to your folder in your Finder, there's going to be a folder that says autosave, and it's all marked by time. So you can go back and kind of get back things that you might have lost. So autosave is just really important thing to have, and to know how to find it once you've done that. Timeline settings, there's all these different settings you can come in and read through. It's like the default transitions, the default audio transitions. If you want to make a still frame, how long that still frame is going to be made for. So these are just all different things that you can adjust. And the still frame is like, if you bring in, say you bring in a photograph, it's going to automatically default mine is to 2 seconds. If you're doing something where you know you're going to want a whole lot of 1 second photographs, you can set this to 1 second, so then you don't have to edit the time each time. So these are just different settings that you can go and look at and do different things with. And sometimes there are things you really like doing, and sometimes you're like, please stop doing that. You can come here and figure out what it's doing. Like one of the things I don't like is after I render something, this right here says play after rendering previews, and that's usually set as a default. So it'll render your whole thing and then just start playing it, which actually drives me crazy because sometimes I like render and walk away, and then all of a sudden it's playing. So I'll just uncheck that. So just kind of go through and look at all these to get kind of feel familiar with what the different menu settings are. So I find that really handy. All right, and then coming up across here at the top, we've got lots of different settings. And so you can have new, which is, you can do all different things. You can do project, you can make a new sequence here. This is where a lot of things, anytime you want to make something new, you come up here. Captions, all this kind of stuff. So you can look through here. A color matte is just, you can use that if you want to make a color matte. That is just making basically a colored piece of media. So if I wanted something that was red, I could do that, or green. Then I hit OK. I'm going to label this green and hit OK. And that's over here in my source project. So now I click on, oops, sorry, don't click on it. Cancel. When you double click on it, it lets you change color. If I just drag it over into my timeline, I now have a piece of green, or whatever you need that for. So that's super handy if you need, say you need a background and you just want colored background. You can just make a piece of media that is green. Like I have a title here, and if I just wanted to put that title over the green, now I have a title over green. So it comes in very handy making different colored backgrounds as needed. Oops. And sometimes
Penny.
Yep.
So there was a comment that said, when I was trying to go between projects, it wouldn't go all the way out of the project I was currently working on, like iMovie does. It would only let me see the bins for the other projects, and I couldn't make a different project's timeline show up without quitting Premiere.
Okay, so you should be able to open 2 projects at the same time. That's strange that you couldn't, but if you open 2 projects at the same time, both full projects will be open. So sometimes it's hard to navigate. So if I'm going to be doing that, what I tend to do is try to close all of my bins down so it's not so messy, because sometimes it will look like what you'd have is you'd have 2 projects here. Let me see if I can open another project and show you. Project. Okay. All right, I'm opening my one from last time. So now I've got 2 projects open. And you can see that this is project class 2 and this is project class. And so these are the main projects from each of the different projects I just opened. But because I have both folders names cuts, it's going to be confusing. But I can come in here and open my cuts for this one. You can see that all of the cuts that I had open from both projects are in the timeline, so I can bounce between the 2 of them if I needed to. So that's what should happen. But you need to make sure that when you open 2 projects, you are looking in the folder. So now I'm going to switch to this one and open this cuts in class 1 and class 2. So they're open here, test 1, that just opened. So you can navigate that way. But just looking at the timeline, it's very hard to tell which projects they're associated with. And so if you are opening like an old project that has, or similar projects that have all the same titles, it might be hard to figure out which one you're looking at. But you should be able to open both of them. The other option, so now I'm gonna come over here. Now I have these 2 projects open. This is project Real Stories class and project class. And there's the hamburger menu right here. I'm gonna click on this one and I'm gonna close this project and just that one project. So now my other class 2 is still open. So that's how you would close a project, is by going there and navigating down to close project. The other way you can open stuff, and this is a little more convoluted, is under Windows and then the media browser. And then here it basically will let you look at your entire computer, kind of like you're looking in the browser. You can navigate into a different project, and this would actually pull a different timeline into the project you're in. So instead of having 2 open separately, this is going to let you pull a timeline in from a different project. And so I'm going to navigate through this. Let's see if I can find. Class 1. And so then I need to go. So now I'm seeing all the folders that are in that project. And then I can open this project through here. Might take a second. And then it's going to pull up everything that's in the project into this window. This is called the media browser. So then I can look at the cuts, and then I can open that timeline. So now you can see that it opened the timeline up here, and it says class 1 source monitor. So it's still not in my project. I'm just having it opened. And if I wanted to move this timeline into my project, I would drag it into my projects. So those are 2 ways to look at other projects inside of Premiere. Does that help? Let me know if that helps. Okay. And then I'm going to just close this panel back, and I'm going to close this. Okay. Okay, and so looking just at these menus, so I just spend some time going through and looking at what is everything is in here. So your undos, which is, you know, the Command Z, and then Command Shift Z is redo. Clips, this is, let's see if I can. Clips. So there are just different things that you can do in here. You can change your speed or duration here. You can, if I had, this is where I would go if I was synchronized, is how I want to, say I shot with 2 cameras and I need to synchronize the footage. I can do that under here. Enable is basically turning on and off a clip. So I just enabled that clip, and so the clip went away. And then I'm going to go clip, enable, and now it comes back. So that's, you know, some of the options that are there. Sequences. This has a lot of information. Your settings are here. So if you needed to change one of your sequence settings, so if I'm working at a certain frame rate, like the other day, I was working on this project here, and they wanted it to be a 1:1 video for Instagram, I think. So I came into my project settings, and you can see right here it says 1920 by 1080. If I change it to 1080 by 1080, then it's a 1:1, so it's square. And then I hit OK. When I changed it, it changed my frame in the timeline. Then I had to go through and fix all my footage to make it fit. But that's a way, if you've decided that you want to make something portrait instead of landscape, this is where you would change your sequence settings to get there. And then also another nifty thing to have here is, so sometimes when you're making projects, you've got like a bunch of tracks. You can see now I have several audio tracks down here that I'm not using. And you can do the same thing if you have a bunch of video, you've stacked everything up and you have all these video tracks and you feel like you're overwhelmed with empty tracks. You go up to sequence and you go to delete track. And then you just check the box to delete the audio tracks, and it's going to delete anything that's empty. If you have a piece of media on there, it won't delete that track. But that's going to delete any empty tracks that you have, which is super handy, because a lot of times, like with some of these projects, I'll say have several pieces of music I want to test out. So I'll have them down there, and I'll have enabled the you know, or turned off or muted several of the tracks. I've listened to all of them, and then I decide on one. I delete all the tracks I don't want to use. Then I've got all these empty tracks that are just sitting there doing nothing. So then you can just go up and delete those there. Let's see what else is good. So again, it's good just to look through these so you can learn what's in there. Markers, you can see I have markers on my timeline here. So I've got these different markers that I've marked out for different reasons. And I'm like, well, now I have too many markers. I want to get rid of the markers. So I can go up to markers and, where am I? Oh, it's not letting me do it for some reason. There we go. Markers, and then I can go clear all markers, and then all those markers went away, so I can start over making markers. I'm a big fan of markers. You can see with different things that I've marked up. So a lot of times I'll mark up music where the music hits are, and then I've decided I don't like them, so I want to clear them out. Or I'll mark up beginning and ends of shots. So the markers are very handy to use.
Excuse me, may I give you a quick question? I can see the menu bar, like when you pull the menu, I can see the menu, but I cannot see which menu you're pulling.
Okay.
So at the very top, we can see.
I think.
Okay, I'm going to change my screen share then, because I think that's the problem. Hold on one second.
I think, Catalina, you can also try at the top of your own screen. It says view options. If you click down, you can also shrink maybe. I believe somebody did that last time and it helps them also view more.
I think the problem was I was just sharing Premiere and I wasn't sharing the whole screen.
Okay.
Because I can see learning, assembly, editing, color, and I can see where the menu pulls, but I cannot see which menu you're pulling. Like,
okay, so can you see now?
Now I can see it.
Now you can see the file. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that was because I had shared it as just Premiere instead of the whole screen. Cool. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so yeah, so that was markers that we were looking at. The other one that comes in handy, and these other ones you can just, I don't use that often, so I'm not sure what's in there, but explore. Windows is super handy. So this is where you can find all your different windows that you're using. Workspace is this whole screen. So this is considered my workspace. And kind of as I was saying before, is I used to have, like when I'm working on my own, I have two screens. And so I'll have a setup that is here, Windows, Workspace, PK Home. And then right now I only have these windows on this main screen and my other bins are on my laptop. So I can see that stuff over there. So that's the difference. And then if I go to Workspace again, I'm gonna go back to one screen and so it changes and it's super helpful for what you like to do. Like at some point you're like, oh, when I'm doing this, I really like to have my timeline really big and I need something else really small. So you can adjust these and then save them and switch between them. Also, it's handy if, say, you're using a public computer or a real series computer or sharing with somebody else who's also editing, you can set up your own workspace. So then when you go and sit down, you can just change it. So it's very handy. And then the other thing they have under workspaces is kind of some presets that are pretty great to use. Like if I go to color, I'm not gonna go into color right now, but I'll show you this for now. So this whole color palette comes up. So I've got my effects over here, and it just changes the screen so it's easier to do color. So that's a really quick and easy way to get into different modes, is by these spaces. And you can also, sometimes what I'll do is, I've been working and I've moved this over here and I moved this over here and I've moved, you know, this over here. And now I don't want to save this as a new workspace, but I want to get back to my old workspace. And so I'm still under the PK1 screen, but I can just go to reset save layout and it's going to go back to where I was. Except for that was in the wrong place. I had saved it. Anyway, that's what it was saved before. So those are really handy window settings that you can use. The other thing that's here are all the different windows that you can pull up. So what I typically do is, when you open Premiere, there's a lot of these tabs that are opened, and I like to go through and close the tabs I don't use. But then if I need something, here's a good example. So this tab's open and I want to close this. I don't want that one open. So I'll go through and close the ones I don't want. But then if there is something I do want, I can come up to Windows and say, oh, I want my audio clip mixer, and then that will come up. And so that's a good way to find different tools that you might need. All right, and so that's all the different things. And you know, it's worth taking some time to just go through and look at what everything does. This is also where, if you had two projects open at once, you can come over here to projects and you could switch between the two projects. So a lot of interesting options here. The other thing I want to touch on is keyboard shortcuts. I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and so I have gone in and made different tools. So you type in here, and you can type in any tool that you're looking for, and then you can map that to your keyboard. So you can make it so it's comfortable for your fingers to use. And if you go up to the settings, there's like the default settings. They've got old Final Cut or Avid settings, and they also have the Premiere settings. And then you can change to what you want, and then you can also customize it to make it do what you want it to do. So you can see that here, my insert, which is my edit from the source window into my timeline, and my overwrite, the overwrite will cover up what's there. The insert will move everything down. I've mapped them to these different, to F5 and 6, because that's where I like them to be, because it's easy for my hands. And my frame match I've put on F. So you can just spend some time thinking about what kind of tools you want just at your fingertips, and it really saves your fingers and wrists from always having to go through and click everything for a tool. So the keyboard preference is great. Also really great, once you find a keyboard setting you like, make sure you save it, so in case somebody else comes to your computer and changes it, you can always get back to it. So that's super handy. All right. So then the next thing I wanted to go over, so those are kind of all the menus up here. Does anybody have any questions about the menus or anything that I just kind of went over? I know I'm going quickly, but I think it's not super interesting, but it's super helpful. So I'm just kind of quickly going through it. All right, so then the other thing that we have that's really great are all of our little tools over here. So there's our toolbar here, and you can do lots of different things with it. So this, I think, as you probably know, is the arrow, and that just lets you move things. You can pick things up and move them around. That's great. Then you can undo. The next one here is to select track. So you have that, and it's got these two little double arrows. So if I want to select everything on my track from here forward, I can click on it, and you can see that it's highlighted it. And anything that is like this orange clip, which is my audio, it highlights the entire clip. But now I can move all of that stuff down. So from wherever oops, let me undo that. So from wherever I click on it, it'll move everything down. So if you wanted to move it down and put something in there, super great tool. The other thing you can do with this is say you only want to move one track, but this is moving everything. If you hold down the shift button, it gives you a single arrow, and that will let me click everything on this track. And from here on, and I can then click on it and then let go. No, why is it not doing it? Yeah, there it goes. So then it just moves moves everything on just the one track. So that is a very handy tool. And then if you looked over here and you kind of hover over it, you can also select backwards. So that's the other option on the tools. You can see with these tools that if there's like a little triangle here in the middle, or sorry, in the corner, there's extra tools. And if you kind of just click and hold on it, it'll show you the extra tools. All right. I'm gonna grab 2 clips and show you something else. Actually, I'm gonna grab 3 clips. Okay. So I'm gonna take these 3 clips, put them over here. And so these are 3 clips in a row. Okay. And now this tool here, which is called the ripple tool, what this will do is, actually, let me show you. So if I take the arrow tool and I grab the end of this clip and move it here, it's just going to move that first clip forward. Like it's just going to cut off the end. So I'm just basically shrinking this clip by sliding. I'm changing the end point by grabbing the end of it. And I'm changing the end point by grabbing the front of it. Okay, now I'm going to grab this one and move it here. Now, say I want to move the in and out of both clips at the same time. So I basically want to move the whole thing just down a few frames. I can take my ripple tool and click on here and it will move. Oh, nope, sorry, that I was wrong. That's the, okay, sorry. The ripple tool is going to change my first clip's end point and push down the rest of the clip. So this is ripple. So I'm rippling my cut by basically making my first clip longer and moving everything else down. So that's the ripple tool. Same thing if I make it shorter, it'll just move everything along with it. So I'm changing pretty much, I'm only changing the edit point of that first clip, but I'm keeping everything right next to each other. Instead of if I had done it with the A, I would, I would move this here and then have to select everything and slide it forward so it touches. So that's what the ripple tool does. Now, if I hover over here, we've got the roll tool. Now the roll tool is where if I want to make this first clip longer and the second clip shorter without affecting anything else, this will let me roll it forward. So I'm rolling this first clip to make it longer and I'm changing the end point of the second clip. So this, you can roll back and forth. So that's the roll tool, ripple and roll. And then the other tool that is on here is the stretch rate tool, the rate stretch tool, which is basically a quick speed change. So it's not accurate. Like you're not saying I want to make this 50% faster. It just lets you make it as fast or as slow as you want. So I've picked this change rate tool and I'm going to grab this clip and I'm going to make it smaller. Now I haven't actually changed my in and out point. I've actually just sped the clip up by using this tool. So now she goes really fast. So that's, or I can grab the clip and stretch it out. Still haven't changed my in or out point, but I've made the clip slow down. So now she's going really slow. So that's the easy way to do a speed change. And that is with the rate change tool here. All right. The next tool is the razor blade tool. It basically stems from when people used to cut film with razor blades. So you've got this one that looks like a razor blade, and it just cuts your clip. So that way, if you like, I want to end this clip here, you can just cut it and then select your arrow tool again, and then delete the other piece of it. So again, the razor blade just cuts things. And then if by chance, I had things stacked on top of each other and I wanted to use my razor blade tool, it's only going to cut one layer at a time. But if I hit the shift key, it'll cut both of them at the same time. So that's if you wanted to cut the entire track on both audio and video, you would hit shift razor blade and you cut through everything. Okay. The slip tool is, okay. The slip tool lets me change the in and out point of a clip without having, it keeps the length of the clip the same length, but it lets me slide either end. So I can slide where it's coming in and where it's going out, but the clip length will stay the same. So I am clicking on this clip, and now you can see here, there is the two pictures of the guy who's filming his cooking show, and that's his in point and the out point. You can also see the girl on the microphone in front, and then the guy climbing the tower on the back. So that's the order of my clips. So now I can see where they're coming in, where my clip that I'm sliding forward and back is coming in. That's really handy for, say, if you're going to be doing something that's a matching shot where, you know, one person threw the ball and somebody else is catching the ball, and you feel like, oh, they're catching it too late. You can do this little slip and slide slip thing where you, is it slip? Yeah, it is slip. You can slip it so you can get the shot to line up just right. So that's kind of handy to do. And then slide, which is one of the other options here, which I never use. Slide, slide will now, it changes the shots around it. So it's gonna keep my clip in the middle the same length, but I'm gonna slide it this way, so it's shortening the clip in front and lengthening the clip in the back. So I'm now sliding this in between the two clips. So that's what this one does, is a slide. I don't use that tool that much. All right, the pen tool is very fun. I'm going to show you, when we get into keyframing in a few minutes, I'm going to get more into the pen tool. But for right now, I will show you on the audio what you can use with the pen tool. So I would basically just grab the bottom of my track and pull it down so it's nice and big. And then I'm also going to slide this together. So I'm basically zooming in on this audio track. I'm going to take my pen tool and say I want the music to dip down. So I'm going to play this for a second. Oops, I've got no video there. 1 second. Okay. All right, so I'm playing that music, and I feel like, oh, I want the music to dip down someplace. So my pen tool, I've got my pen. I'm going to make some dots. So basically, if I make one dot here, nothing's going to happen because it's just like a 1 point, but I need to make a second point for it to pivot off of. And then I can drag that second point down. So now my music is going to dip down. So that's a great way to make a fade or anything like that. So the pen tool lets you, if I don't want to go all the way down, I can slide this up, you know, and then I can make another point, 2 more points, and then I can make this come back up like this. So the pen tool just lets you make points for different actions to happen. Okay. All right. Where were we? The hand tool just moves stuff. No, it doesn't. It moves your timeline. I never use the hand tool. So play with the hand tool. Let me know what it does, because I never use it. Sorry. And then the title tool. If you click on the title tool, okay, I've clicked on the T for title, and now I'm going to come up to I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. I'm going to click on my screen. Now I get this little red box, and now I can type. Now I've made a title over this person. And you can see that when I made the title, I've got this pink box now. So this is now my graphics box. And so I can make it line up with him, or I can put it over all 3 of these by grabbing the end and stretching it. Okay. And then if I want to edit it, I click on it, and then I go up to my effects controls, and then you go down to, no, where is it? Sorry, I double click on it. Oh, here it is, sorry. The text was closed. So I flip open the text button, and now I can modify. So here is this 100 is the size of the font, so I can make it. You need to click in the box and highlight the text that you want to affect. And then I can slide it and make it larger or smaller. Or I can go to fill and change the color of it. And here's the font, so I can change the font to something else. That's not what we want it to look like. It is acting up. There we go. So we can change the font. So this, again, really good to kind of experiment. If you want to change the location, you can come up to position, and you can either change all of the text together that's on that screen, or you can also come down to the position down here under the text tool, and you can just, you can slide this up and down or side to side depending on where you want it. And there's scaling and there's rotation if you want it to spin, all that kind of stuff. So that is the title tool. So while I'm here, any questions so far on any of this? Okay. I'm gonna get into the effects in a minute, but I also know we have 20 minutes left. So I'm gonna show you a little bit about keyframing, and I'm gonna show you the keyframing in the title tool, but this works. I'm not gonna show you the title tool. I'm gonna show you someplace else so it'll be easier to understand. So I'm gonna delete that title. I wanna get into keyframing. So we're gonna start with this clip. So those are all the kind of basic tools that are there. And the other thing that you're going to use a lot is your effects palette. And so to get to that, what you're going to do is you're going to pick the clip that you want to affect. I want to make this long so we can do different things with it. Okay. So I'm going to double click on this clip here. And then you can see that it's come up in this window. When I come over to effects controls, I have a whole menu of different things I can do. And those things I can do are, I can change the position of this. And I can move it right or left, up or down. If I click on the motion, I get this little box around the whole video. And then I can like grab this and I can shrink it down, or I can make it bigger. If I make it bigger, I want to reposition it. So you can do that all just by moving the clip. If you have two clips stacked on top of each other, make sure you have double clicked clip you want, because it mostly defaults to the top clip, So you'll need to make sure you double click here and then go to the motion to make it work. Because if I'm just here and I double click, I can actually, oops, stop the text tool. Well, I can click on here and move her around just like this, which is nice and easy. But if I had another clip on top for some reason and I wanted to affect my bottom, so I'm going to make him, double click on him, make him small, and put him over, oops, in the corner here. But now I want to affect her, and I just double click on her. I'm still going to get him, so I'm going to have to click on her and then do it. So it's easier sometimes if you keep seeming to grab the wrong clip, just come up to your effects panel and do it that way. Okay. So motion, and that's the so motion has positioning. So this is all the, like moving her left and right. Scale is making her big or small. You can do it here, or you can grab the pins and do it. Rotation, obviously, you can make the clip spin. Anchor point is the anchor point is this center point where things happen. So there's sometimes different effects that you're trying to do, and you want the anchor point to be in a different place. Again, it's not something you mess with a lot until you figure out that I need to fix that, but I very rarely mess with the anchor point. Opacity makes things the darker and lighter. Opacity starts the keyframe, so sometimes I just get rid of that if we need to. And there are also these masks, which I'm going to show you in a minute on how to use the masks. And then time ramping is a stylus speed change, which is a little complicated, and I actually really just trial and error with the time ramping when I want to use it. So that's something that's a little more advanced and also just takes some time to practice with. So what I wanted to show you, we're going to get into keyframes. So keyframes, the idea behind a keyframe is you have 2 points on your clip that you have marked out. And those keyframes are going to be like, here's this information here, and here's this information here. And those are our important frames. And then the information in between is going to kind of be interpreted to make it go from one to the other. So what that means is I am going to make keyframes work in your effects palette, you need to turn on this little stopwatch. So basically you're turning on the time of this clip. So when you first turn it on, you're going to get a little triangle on your timeline, and that's your first keyframe. And you can highlight it and move it if you want it in a different spot. So we're just going to put our first keyframe here. And then I'm going to come down to further in the clip and put a second keyframe by touching this little metal button. So now you see I have 2 keyframes, 1 and 2. Right now, the scale at both keyframes is 100, so there's no movement in my clip. It's just, it's staying the same. I can use these arrows to bounce between the different keyframes that are there. So now I've come to the second keyframe, and I am going to enlarge her. So now I've got a keyframe where she is 175% and a keyframe where she is 100%. And in the between, it is taking however long however far apart they are from each other to get from one point to the other. So let me play that for you. So I've keyframed this. You can see it's slowly moving because they're kind of far apart. So it's a slow push in. Okay, so that works. Now say I wanted to go faster, I can just grab this keyframe. They're closer together now. And we're gonna do this, and okay, there we go. She's pushing in. Okay, great. Now that I've done this, I'm gonna actually make it a slow push again. So now I have this slow push, but what's happening is her head's going out of frame, so I don't like that. So what I wanna do is I'm now gonna keyframe the positioning. So I'm gonna come back to this first keyframe, and I'm gonna turn on my position keyframe, which will make the little dot. And then I'm gonna go clicking this arrow, going to my second keyframe, and I'm going to make a little dot. And this time I am going to just come over here and grab this and slide her down so her head is in frame. So, you know, before when we did the push, her head went out of frame. So this time when we do it, because I've changed the positioning, I've keyframed the positioning along with the zoom in, she's staying in frame. So that's kind of how the keyframes work, is by adding the 2 points and making them do different things for you in between. And you can do, you know, if I wanted to say at the same time, I'm going to turn on my rotation, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rotate her as she does this, which is ridiculous, but it's a good thing to try and test. So now when she does it, she's pushing in, she's staying, you know, the positioning is changing, and she's rotating. So I could also, though, say I wanted to move her here and then put another keyframe and put it back to 0. So now when we do it, it's going to undo itself. It's going to twist and then go back because we have more than one keyframe. So you can do that. The more keyframes you add, it's the points where it's, when it gets to that point, it's going to be in this position. So that's keyframing. And then if I wanted to reset my keyframes or reset anything at the end next to it, this is the reset. Oops, that didn't reset it. Let's add another keyframe. Huh, it shouldn't be doing that. It should be resetting, but it's not. Okay, well, I'm gonna turn off all of these. Sometimes Premiere does what it's not supposed to do. So as I turn off all these little stopwatches, it's gonna take away my keyframes, but it's gonna also leave me whatever position I was in last. So that works. Okay, and then I can reset it and it should I'll go back to normal. Where are we on time? Okay, under opacity, all right, under opacity, this is where you can make masks of things. And so opacity, as I said before, its keyframe is always is this, the toggle is already on. So I'm going to turn that off because I don't want it to make a keyframe. But if I wanted to adjust the opacity, like make everything darker, so now basically I'm making this just see-through, so I can see through the black. Okay. If I put another clip on top and I affect the opacity of this first clip on top, and if you drop down this menu, you get a little slider. So now you can see the 2 of them at the same time. For, you know, if you want to do a ghostly effect or something like that. So basically you're looking through his image and seeing her behind. But that's not really what we want to do. So we're going to undo that. We're going to put him back to normal opacity and put her, she's already, okay. What I want to show you how to do though is how to make a mask. And so I'm going to make a square mask. And so basically this mask that has gone on here is cut out everything except for what's inside the square. So I am going to, we're going to pretend she's talking about him on her podcast. And so now we've made him kind of like a picture in picture in her podcast, and I'll move him in a second. So he's not over her face. And the mask, you can also see feathering is how soft the edges are. The opacity of the mask is how dark it is. So I'm going to now click position and grab his whole image and move him over here. So now it's almost like a picture in picture, and say she's talking about him. Okay, look, and he's cooking and everything like that. So this is a way to do a picture in picture or use the mat. And then the other thing that you can do is if you hit inverse, then you're going to have just whatever we didn't mask out of his image looking through at her. So now he has her head type thing, or whatever you want to do with it. So that's the inverse, does the opposite, where it cuts out what's inside the square. So a regular cuts out everything outside the square that you've made, and inverse cuts out everything inside the square. And that's the mask. What you can also do is there's a pen tool in your mask. And so I could also like say I just want to cut like this kind of rough thing, but you can get very in the middle of it. And so now I've made this, it's not a square or a circle, it's just this weird mask that fits him. And so if you want to do that, you can then also take this, move him over here. So those are really handy for different effects that you want to try. So that's keyframing. Okay. And then the other, when you go into your effects palette, I'm going to close some of these. So your effects down here have lots of different effects. You've got your like video transitions, your video effects, a lot of fun stuff just to play with. So I think it takes, you just kind of take time and go through and play with different things. But I'm going to grab, one to show you how it works. Will this work? Okay, so I'm putting a twirl on here. So nothing's happening because, and the way you put it on is you just grab the effect and drop it on the clip. And then when you double click on the clip again and look at your controls, it says twirl. So what happens when you twirl? Oh, she's going to do that. Great, that's exciting. So we're going to undo that. So she's not twirling yet. We're going to come to the front of the clip. And this is, we've got angle and the radius of the twirl and the center of the twirl. So I'm going to keyframe my angle, and I'm going to have her start off normal, and then I'm going to add a keyframe here, and she's going to get all twisted. Beautiful. All right, and so then I'm going to add a twist radius, and then I'm going to come back over here and add another keyframe, and I'm going to have the radius start off small and come over here. Let's see, that keyframe, and I'm going to have it get big. So now you can see that there is a red bar on my timeline. That means that the computer is having to think a lot and it needs to render. So you can Option R or come up to sequence and hit render, and that's going to just render the whole timeline to make it easier for the computer to play it back better. It does kind of the heavy lifting ahead of time. Sometimes it'll let you play it back without rendering, and sometimes it just stops playing. And so if you're ever working on a project and you have a yellow or a red bar on the top and it's not playing back very well, just take a second to render your whole timeline. And or if you have a big long timeline, you only want to do a section, you can hit in and out and just render the in and out of that timeline, and that will keep it playing smoothly. So, and I lied because now it's still red. I don't know why it did not do what I asked it to. Oh, I do. Hold on a second. I have some in and out. I think I had it in and out set on the earlier section of it. Hold on. Sometimes you make mistakes and we have to just get past them. I'm going to finish this section up in a second, and then if you have questions, be thinking about questions because we'll have about 10 minutes for questions in a minute. So, all right, so now it's green. It should play well. And now we can see that the keyframe is changing what she's doing. So yeah, so that's how you would keyframe an effect. And there's just a ton of different effects to look through and play with. And so if you want something, you can go make things black and white. You can make things, play with the color and things like that. Real quickly, I want to talk quickly about color unless you guys had other questions. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and let us know, either type it in or let us know. But otherwise, I want to show you some color stuff really quickly. It's very basic color, but I'm going to come here. I'm going to highlight this and remove the twist. Okay. So I'm going to go up to Windows and go to my workspace and go to color. All right. So lots of fun stuff, and I recommend just playing with it. But what you can do is, if you want to do super basic color things, this is called the Lumiere color, and it will just help you in all, like, you can do super advanced or super basic color. A really easy way to do something with color is you hit auto, and it's going to go through that. See, it brightened her up. It kind of changed the background. You can see where these were all set at 0 before, and they've moved around. So like the temperature will change the color. I want her room to be more blue, or I want it to be like, it's hot, so she's on fire here. So, so we can change the color here. You can also tint it a little for whatever reason. If you feel like your story, you need something that's a different color, you can tint it there. The exposure can help you if something's over or underexposed. You can get a little bit of extra help with this. Then contrast makes your darkers dark. You can see how, like, if I go this way, that in the back, the dark is the blacks are getting pretty dark. It's called crushing the blacks. You want to sometimes bring them down so they're very deep. Highlights change the color of the brightest part. Shadows are kind of the darker parts. Your whites, you can make so if something's super bright white, you don't want it that way, or if you want something to feel very bright, you can play with your brights. And then you can also, and then blacks are the same. You can, like, so wow, those blacks are really dark, or you can brighten it up and now it feels like there's a white wash over everything. So you want to find something that feels natural. I can reset it back to where it was originally. Saturation will take the color out, so now it's black and white, and now it has super amount of color and saturation. So reset, and then auto, then it's going to make it. The auto is pretty good. Like, if you don't have a whole lot of time and you just want to do a quick color correct, the auto usually works pretty well. Under, give me a second. Okay. So we are under basic, and that's what we were looking at. If you go to the color wheel match, there is a, it says comparison view. You click on that, and up in this window, you can scrub through your whole timeline and pick a shot that you want to, say, make something similar to. So we have her here, and I'm going to come over to this guy over here and try to make his match. So now I have it next to each other, so I can see what she looks like, and then I can see if I can make him match, which is really handy sometimes, especially if, say, you shot the same person in the same blue shirt in 2 different lights, and you want to make those blues look the same, and you can't quite remember from one moment to the next which one you like better or which blue looked better. You can put the 2 shots next to each other and try to get them really close. So now that I've got this comparison frame here, and then this gentleman is here, under apply match, I'm going to click that, and it's going to go through and analyze the clip that I've decided I want it to look like and try to make it look similar colors. Well, these shots are so different and he's so blown out, you can't really tell, but it's made it a little bit similar in color and temperature, and that's kind of the automatic way of doing it. If I don't like it, I can go back and change his however I want. So here's your color wheel. So if I'm feeling like, oh, I really want this shot to be a little more green in the highlights, I can pull this into the green, and it's going to pull out some of those blues and pull it more into the green world, and then now he looks 6, so let's not do that. And kind of do the same thing here in our mid-tones. I'm making the walls more green. You can slide stuff around and kind of, color. There's a whole lot of color theory that I'm not really great with, but these it can help. I can make, shots match and people look like they're alive. So sometimes like just adding a little bit of pink to your midtones will kind of like lighten up and pink up some people's skins if they're looking too washed out. So that's kind of like the basic colors. Is a great place to play. Back up under basic color, a LUT is sometimes when you shoot with a certain camera, it'll shoot either flat or it's going to kind of look a little off. You can go to this drop down menu, and if you know what camera you're shooting with, you can pick that camera out of here, and it'll help make the footage look like it looked when they were shooting it. And also under creativity, there's a whole lot of looks that you can play with. You can kind of scroll through. So if you wanted to do, say you're doing a horror film or a moody piece or something that you wanted a certain look for, you can go through and make these kind of automatic color changes already. So, all right, we're getting almost out of time. I think we're going till 5. Is that right?
Yes, I know there's so much with Adobe Premiere, but I think you did such a good job, Penny, and you jumped right in. We had a couple people leave early because they had to jump on other Zooms, but for the people who are still here for the last couple minutes, anything last minute you'd like to ask Penny, or any clarifications, you have a few minutes if you're interested in following up with anything.
This was very good. Thank you. What is, if you were going to correct that window in the back, how would you mask just an area of the frame to color correct?
Yeah, actually what I might do is duplicate the shot and then mask out that window and darken up that window part. And then, and so that way I'm just affecting the window and not the whole clip. If some of the fancier, like Resolve is a color program that I don't really use, but they have what they call power windows that you can do a lot more of the like specific color grading in a certain area. But an easy way to do it would be to use like a mask like I showed you, duplicate the frame. So you would just kind of put this above it. And so you'd have 2. You can make a duplicate of the clip and have 2. And then I would click on this one, double click on this. I'll grab my pen tool and kind of just okay, actually it's not gonna let me do it here. Let me turn off. Oopsie. I need to turn off my comparison view. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to draw my little rough mask around him. And then I can grab these and slide it out to be something like that. Mm-hmm. So then that I've done that, I could then go to my exposure and pull it down. Okay, that looks a little bit better. And then I can come back to my mask and make my feather a lot bigger so it looks a little bit better, and then kind of slide it out. So it would be kind of a trial and error. If you're doing it, I would actually probably mask him out a lot easier. You could also, he's going to end up moving around a little bit. So you can add a keyframe to the mask path and hit play. And it should track around his arm. And I say it works about 80% of the time, but it's worth giving it a try because it's like an easy cheat before you get super into having to do a lot of like rotoscoping or keyframing. So what it's doing is it's going through right now and making keyframes. So they will pop up right here in a second with a bunch of keyframes for tracking the mask. So now you can see all those little keyframes. So now hopefully when we play it, it's not perfect. Yeah, it didn't really work. So, but that's a trial and error kind of.
That's helpful.
Okay, cool.